my next guests, will show you how to create more relevant customer experience by gathering accurate and consented data, how to expand reach in paid media, and how to improve data collaboration using data clean rooms. Please welcome Dr. Dirk Rohweder, COO and co-founder Tivaru, and Jonas Rashedi, data and digital advisor here on stage.
So, hello. Time is already running, right? Yeah, I think we should not introduce ourselves. It's already done. So we could start with the topic, and the topic is critical mass. So the topic divided into separate topics, critical mass and privacy first, right? Could you explain the first one, critical mass?
Yeah, I mean, critical mass is something everybody talks about, is how do I reach enough customers?
Yeah.
And this has become more difficult if we really want to target them. And as we know, some of the things that used to work in the past, like third-party cookies, are on demise, so it's difficult to reach the target audience. But also, what sometimes is forgotten is not just a problem in paid media, but on all media, if you really want to identify a person there as well, it's also difficult, because typically what we see, lock-in rates, maybe you said like, when we discussed it, 1 to 2%, I said like 5 to 10%, depending obviously on the company.
Yeah.
But then also, yes, you reach them on the website, but do you have the information about those customers or prospects that you really want? So critical mass is an important topic that we have to deal with.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult because the trends are more going into micro-segmentation, personalization on-site, and they all want to talk about one-to-one personalization, but at the end you need one critical mass so that you could slice the mass into one-to-one, into micro-segmentation, right? And that's more or less forgotten, that you should start with big data or gathering relevant data, and then you could slice it. And the most companies, if you check the data, you will see that they are more depending on walled gardens, they are more depending on pixels from third-party stuff, and they are not depending on their own data. And they should.
And I think if we then go kind of into the solution space, so what can you actually do to reach a critical mass, both in paid media as well as kind of on your own websites in terms of personalization, then obviously it's all about having the right identifiers to reach them. You mentioned walled gardens. Obviously, we all know that when you can't do it with third-party cookies anymore, you have the possibility of custom match. But for that, you need to activate your data that you have about customers, and then you have to have the right permissions. You have to be able to connect them to behavioral data. So that is a challenge kind of in itself. But if you get the combination right, you can really leapfrog in the way you get this critical mass done.
Yeah, and so to use some buzzwords, I think that the difference is cross-channel and omni-channel. And cross-channel is you optimize your SEA, you optimize your display based on the pixels from the different networks. Omnichannel, in my opinion, is gathering all information based on different identifiers on your own, like customer data platform or other buzzwords we could use, and then you should activate them again across different channels. For example, if you would like to acquire new customers, it makes sense to use lower funnel stuff like SEA Blah or something else, and then you could retain the customers based on your own media, right? For newsletter, website. And for that, you need, for sure, good privacy, constellation, consent. Otherwise, it makes no sense, or it's not allowed.
Yeah. I mean, the consent is one thing, but the other thing is, yes, we have all these great pictures of omni-channel and saying I can do things kind of across many touch points. But the challenge you have is very much, again, the question of identity. Because how do you know it's you, Jonas, in front of that device, in front of the other device, in the other channel? And then many things sound very good, but in practice, if this is missing, you actually see yourself kind of as 10 different incarnations. And then if you don't bring it together, obviously you can't create an experience that kind of works. Yeah? And I think that's one of the core challenges that actually a solution needs to be found for. And there are some emerging solutions for that.
Yeah. If we slide it or do a one-to-one step, what would be the first step to ensure that you build an identity graph, or if you build identities based on your different customers?
Yeah. So I mean, first, when we talk about kind of identity graph, the concept is kind of, in a way, simple, because it's actually saying you have devices and you want to understand which person is using those devices.
Yep.
And typically the best way of doing that is actually while you're sitting in front of the device, the connection is made, not somewhere 2 hours later or 1 hour later, kind of in a data warehouse. So that's the basic concept. And as we discussed, to just use a login is not good enough to do it. So you need to find additional ways of doing it. And there you can use, for example, identification. You click on an email link. You can link it to something which you do on your website, like a newsletter or an inquiry where you leave personal data. So if you bring that holistically together, then you can reach kind of a much higher identification.
Yeah. If I look into the path, in my opinion, a lot of companies invest in web analytics, integrate web analytics tools. They not really invest into tech management, to be honest. Nobody care about server-to-server integration, the most companies, in my opinion. And I think that's the foundation, right? The technical foundation to ensure that you first identify on a good identifier like email, customer data and stuff like that, and then you need to link the data into a tool with more or less no loss of data.
Yeah, I mean, I think web analytics is a very good example. So let's take Google Analytics, but you can take any analytics platform. And when you basically just use device IDs, or Google calls it client IDs, then we have exactly the problem. Yeah. You basically say, oh, I'm counting devices, I'm not counting user. I can't attach user data to it. And then we have very sophisticated algorithms. But these sophisticated algorithms and KE, if you don't bring kind of the different personas together, they just don't get proper results. Yeah. Yeah? And the good news with this is that these tools all have the concept of the user ID. Yeah? Yeah. So I always say you can supercharge those tools because they also can be provisioned with the user ID. And simply, you should use your own marketing ID instead of just a login ID or a CRM identifier. And then suddenly you can kind of boost the way you use web analytics. But for that, you need to solve identity in one place, and then you can give this identity, your own user ID, kind of to all the applications in your MarTech and AdTech stack.
Yeah, so idea is to use 2 or 3 identifiers on the website, right? Email, post address, or something like that. You can use in the app something else, like app IDs and email for sure, and then you could use your email address based on your marketing automation tool. And then it overlaps, and then at the end you have 20, 30, 40% of data you could use in the future.
Yeah, so I mean that's what we can typically see. Even if you have like, let's say 5% login identification, you can bring the identification like to 60%, which obviously is a huge increase. And the other good news is the ones you don't get, obviously because they haven't consented or they just go to the website once and there's no identification event. Anyway, those are not the core customers which you try to get with personalized messages. Yeah.
If I compare cookie matching rate, DMP, I think they are more or less 30 or 40%. If you compare it to a customer data platform in combination with an identifier graph, I think you have more than 60, 70%. So it's you will reach for sure your customers. You can bring them to make the second purchase and stuff like that, and that's good because you can reduce your acquisition costs, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then it's at the end, it's not a no-brainer, but it's a simple calculation.
Yeah, I think it's this calculation. Actually, what's also interesting, what we find is that you have all these stats about kind of browser percentages and how much is Chrome. What we actually find is that with a lot of clients, actually, Safari and Firefox and web views are used a lot more than on the average. Yeah? So the problem very often is with clients that address certain audiences much higher than even the average number. So basically the coverage with the Google browser is less than the average statistics actually show you.
And I think it depends on the different markets and the different sections from the customers. Yeah. So the development in the market is more or less implementing a good tech management solution in combination with identity graph to combine it, have the relevant data, identify the relevant customer, and then use it at the end for activation for lookalike or for other ideas to target people new and for sure retaining customers.
Yeah, so I think that's the foundation, the basic. Also, what's quite interesting, and maybe the audience already heard about it, the four telecommunication providers across Europe founded UTIC, a joint venture, and they can basically use the IP address to create semi-stable MarTech paths, it's called, and with that you can really address audiences across different publishers, so you have frequency capping there. You can make sure that you actually target persons rather than that bots are creating traffic. And thirdly, if they are on your website, you can also retarget. And the good thing is actually you don't talk about match rate like 30-40%, but you can because it's deterministic, you can match 80 to 90%. Yeah? So there's a new opportunity out there also in the paid media world to reach critical mass.
Yeah, but then the blueprint is you need to start with privacy first, right? So the first point is you need to gather the consent across different devices so that you could use the data.
Yeah, I mean, I even go one step further because we said like privacy first, and I mean, everybody would say, yeah, privacy first, we do that. But the question is, the industry has not worked privacy first. I mean, let's face it. Yeah? It is to say, okay, we want to optimize, and then we want somehow to get the permissions, and if this is intransparent or not very clear, we don't really care as long as we kind of get it and can justify it. And I think there is a huge change, and I think every company needs to answer the questions, kind of what is their really privacy policy? I mean, I still see so many that are relying on fingerprinting, IP addresses to still do matches. And I think from a privacy perspective, you really need to make up your mind, is that really what you want to do? Yeah, I still see companies that say, okay, on the consent banner, oh, I'm sharing this with my 380 partners. Yeah? So is this really instilling trust in terms of, is this a privacy first? I would say, I would make some question marks. And I think the point really is, some say it's getting so difficult to do the consent, to get the data, let's just all leave it out. But the customers, in the end, they want personalization, they have a benefit from personalization and being targeted in the right way. But it has to be built on trust. And when you have trust, then we can see that consent rates of 90% are possible. And then it's a small fraction. And I think those that actually don't want to give them, we have to respect it. Yeah? They just want to do it anonymous, maybe at that time. And also you can at some point say, okay, you can run reconsent campaigns, so maybe people change their mind if they get too used to you. So there are ways of dealing with it, but I think it needs to come with the right philosophy.
Yeah, but that could be a new stage for loyalty programs, because you have the on-site, I'm not a lawyer, but you have on-site consent, which is not that good as a signed contract for a loyalty program. So it makes sense to think about, do you have different stages of privacy or the way how you use data? Because you need, based on the law, very crystal clear what you do with the data and how you use it to build trust.
Yeah, I mean, I like this idea of saying actually it's like you get started, you give some consent, then you build a relation, and then you say, I have developed more trust. Now I'm signing up to a loyalty program. I know it's a reputable company. I can do that. So sometimes it's also a journey of building trust over time. It's like in personal relationships. Also, you build trust over time. You don't have all the trust from the very first moment.
Yeah. I would like to start with one customers or one brand to see if it makes sense to send them the customers an email and explaining, okay, we would like to get more data, like zero-party data, to ensure that we will reach only the relevant channels for you. So please feel free to log in as with a mobile ID, with your iPad, with your desktop, with your working desktop, to ensure that we exclude you on the working or the office desktop and stuff like that, to see if it makes a difference. So if the customer is willing to help us to optimize and personalization in the personalization.
Yeah, I mean, our experience is that if you explain it and you explain the advantage, they actually do. They have to understand that they are basically getting something kind of in return. And the reality is, in many industry, this aspect of building a relationship, of giving more service, because I need more data to give you that service, that is understood. And if people are at that point, then at least from our experience, and the statistics show that, they actually give this type of concept.
Yeah. So Blueprint, privacy, focusing on gathering the right data. It sounds very easy, but it's not that easy. The consent on different channels, you need to discuss it with your lawyer internally to ensure, and you need to explain what is it, identity graph. You need to explain the difference between cross and omni-channel and what's the benefits for the customers. Then you need to roll out somehow, test it with 1 or 2 or 3 channels, see if there's a benefit, and then starting to identify the people across different devices, app and mobile, desktop, and then optimizing 2, 3, 4, 5 channels and see what's the difference.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's not that you don't need to implement a big solution. You could start very simple.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because sometimes it sounds like this is a huge project, or you have to do kind of a lot of things, and to introduce kind of a marketing identity stepwise, as you just described, is not a huge project. Obviously, you need to do some things like integrating kind of things into your website, into your app. You need to think about how you do the consent, but it's not like a massive IT project which needs a lot of resources on the marketing and IT side, like a full CDP implementation or something like that. So it can be done stepwise. You can see kind of how much additional identifications you actually achieve, what is the commercial benefit of doing that, and then obviously if you're already doing personalization, then you can immediately see the uplift because you're already doing that, but you're just doing it on a much smaller scale.
Yeah. So there's one minute left. We are currently working on a book together, right? That's more than, let's say, 120 to 140 pages. We somehow did all this stuff now in 20 minutes. So feel free to pre-order the book, Die Zukunft des Online-Targetings, more or less without cookies or with less third-party cookies. And we had already some episodes together in my podcast, My Data is Better Than Yours. So it could be good to hear them as well.
Yeah, so I think actually we changed the title from Cookieless, because obviously with the Google announcement we now put it into targeting, but we think the topic has not changed dramatically. It's still relevant. Maybe some feel there is a little less pressure, but the dynamics that we talked about are totally there.
Cool. And we are good in time.
Okay.
Thank you, Dirk.
Okay, thank you.